Welcome back. Let's sew the modified interior to the amethyst tote. I have all my pieces cut out and ready to go. I've also labeled the back side of them. I'm using waterproof canvas, so I do not need to have these interfaced, and piece E and F, I didn't label F because it's a cloth, but E and F do not get interfaced. If I were using cotton, yes, I would interface these to give them some more structure, but since I'm not, I'm going to continue. I will try to remember to stop and give you instructions if you are using cotton. If you're using cotton canvas that has some structure to it, most likely I would treat it the same as I do with this, okay? Because cotton canvas on the back side is usually pretty okay. It's, you know how cotton is muted on one side, you don't want that showing. So I would definitely do an interior piece. So for example, I would have two of these, I'd put them together, and then I'd sew the top and bottom seams. Leave the side edges raw, but I would sew the top and bottom. So make a tube when I get to it. Okay. To get started, we need piece A, B, C, and E. So let's set D and F aside. We're going to start with piece E, and we need to take care of the edge, top and bottom of this piece. It is going to go over piece B, which is the sleeve panel. So I'm going to fold over the top edge and the bottom edge. The sides are going to be left raw because, as you see, when I put it over top of the water bottle panel, this will get encapsulated in the seam. So 1/2 inch seam allowance, 1/2 inch seam allowance, top stitch, and I'm good. And that piece will be ready. Okay. Could I turn it over twice to encapsulate the raw edge? Absolutely. I'm not going to because waterproof canvas is pretty stable. You know, if you play with it, or if it's, you know, your scissors aren't sharp, you'll get a few fuzzies, but with this, I'm good. My bag's been great. I'm not going to use the extra yardage. Okay, so if you're using cotton, you're going to put two pieces right sides together, interfaced, and then you're just going to sew your seam allowance on the top and bottom. Again, leave that raw. Okay, so let's go over to the machine and get started. You'll need A, B, C, and E. All right, so my machine is the DDL 8700. It is not a walking foot. I have Tex 45 thread in my top and bobbin, and we're ready to go. Put my light on. There we go. Okay, so again, 1/2 inch seam allowance. You can clip it if you need to. This creases fairly easily. I'm going to take a 1/4 inch top seam. It's just my preference. You can do 1/8. If you do 1/8, then maybe you want to have this be a double fold, but do whatever you're most comfortable. Stitch length of 5. To avoid having to backstitch and have it visible, I oftentimes will start on the side of a seam, because this is going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I know that the stitch that I do here is like a basting stitch, and I won't have to I'm trying to get it so I know it's a 1/4 inch. There we go. Sew up the side and then come across, and I don't have to have backstitching here. Backstitching would have been caught in the seam allowance, so it would have been fine. You'll see me do that kind of a stitch later in the bag too. And then I don't have to backstitch. Okay, so piece E is done. We're going to set it on top of piece B. And I like to have it basically in the center. There's no science to placing this piece. Just think that this is the top of your bag. But to give you an idea, 2.5 inches, approximately 2.5 inches down. You can do 2 inches down. If your sleeve is bigger, you can do it, you know, just basically, just make sure it's level. Okay, so take one of your rulers and make sure it's level. Okay, 2.5, 2.5, and it touches my ruler. So there we go. All right, and now I'm just going to baste each side. Stitch length of 5 again, right along my edge. I do not need to back stitch this because it's just a basting stitch. I always clip all my threads. I don't like any of them showing. Okay, so there we go. That is our water bottle sleeve. And what I often like to do is take the water bottle that I know I'm going to be using and make sure that it fits in well. So this is a 3-inch diameter water bottle. Here is my 4-inch diameter water bottle. And that one will fit just nicely as well. Okay, a little bit of growing room in case you have a little bit bigger bottle. But should be good. That's plenty of room. If you make it and you have a smaller water bottle and you use the bigger size, you can always take and pinch part of your fabric and make yourself a pen sleeve. Pen fits in there just nicely. I always like pen sleeves in my bags because it makes them easier to find. So I would just take and stitch down the pen sleeve. Okay, so that's another option too. This one I'm going to leave large just because it's going to be put on my site and I want to be able to accommodate all different sizes. Okay, so now we need A and C. So here's A. It's very important that when you're doing this portion that you have set in front of you. So that's why when I label these, I like to label them so that they're in the right direction. This is the width, this is the height, okay? The width on the modified version is taller, that width. I know you can't see all that. The width is longer, a 1/2 inch longer than the height, okay? So I'm gonna place piece A right side up. Our new piece BE is going to go right sides together along the edge. Okay. C we can set aside for now. So we actually didn't really need it, but there you go. Okay, so A and BE. Okay, our new B, piece B. So let's call it A and our new piece B. You can clip these together if you like. I don't tend to clip them, but I'll put a couple clips in there just to show. Okay, so I'm going to take a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I built a 1/2 inch in because I like to top stitch and I like the forgiveness of a 1/2 inch just in case. Let's go ahead and do our 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's okay to back stitch here. I'm going to decrease my stitch length to 4, a little bit under 4. With waterproof canvas, you don't want it too tight, too close together. This is an interior stitch, so it's okay to back stitch. It's not going to be seen. And now what I'm going to do is open up my seam allowance. If you're using cotton, go ahead and iron it. I am not going to iron this. But open up my seam allowance. Now I'm going to top stitch. So I'm going to start and I'm going to move my pocket out of the way, my sleeve, excuse me. I'm going to move the sleeve out of the way and I'm actually going to start here. I will back stitch here because this will be hidden then. So I'm going to start here and go up, across, all the way down over and then back up into this part of the sleeve. So my stop and starts will be hidden. So just move that out of the way. Make sure you can feel your seam allowance here. And actually I have to go upside down in order to start in the sleeve. Okay. So I'm starting in the sleeve, stitch length of 5, couple stitches, back stitch, and then here we go. Again, a 1/4 inch stitch for the top stitching. I prefer 1/4 inch than 1/8. And at a stitch length of 5, I usually go from one side to the next with 2 stitches. That makes it easy. Just count them. Now I'll go down the other side all the way down. Again, stitch length of 5. Feel my seam allowance. I know it's opened up nicely. I can see it at the end here as well. Needle down, turn, back up. I'm going to open up my sleeve again, and I'll finish in my sleeve. 2 stitches back. There we go. And there it is. Okay. Could you stitch over the pocket? Could we? Absolutely, we could. I don't like to because I like less pressure on this, and I prefer the bulk of the pressure on the sleeve to be in the seam allowance. Okay, but you could. For easy's sake, you absolutely could. It will also take away a little bit of room in here, but if it's wide enough and your water bottle is skinny enough, not going to be a big deal. Okay. All right, so now we need piece C, and piece C is going to go right sides together on our new piece B. Again, you can clip it if you'd like. 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, open it up. And there we have our water bottle sleeve. So now we need to open up our seam allowance again on the back side. Okay. And we're going to stitch the same way we did on this side. I will start in the pocket. Nope, in the sleeve. Keep wanting to call it a pocket, but it is a sleeve. Pocket has a bottom, sleeve does not. So on this side of my material, I usually curl it up. You can also take a clip and just clip it to keep it. You don't want this to get in the way and then bump your stitches and make a jig-jag top stitch. Okay, so I'm going to start in here. I'm going to come up and around all the way down, back over, and then into the bottom of the pocket, the sleeve. Yep, and I always do that. I start with it right side up. I'm not going that direction, so I have to turn it upside down. There. Now, if that gives you trouble holding that in place, you could use some double-sided tape on the underside, but I'm not going to. I think it's kind of a waste. It's easy to pick it up and adjust. Again, if you're using cotton, take it back to your machine and iron it. All right, stitch length of 5 again. My back stitches will be hidden inside the sleeve. Needle down to pivot. I can feel the seam allowance. Oops. So now I went more than 2 stitches. What I tend to do is hand crank, lift my presser foot, and just move it back. Oops. And I try to match up the same hole. So I'm going to feel under here, open it up, and spin it. Again, I'm folding my fabric because it hits the interior part of my machine, and when I'm stitching, it would push the whole thing out, and I don't want a jig-jaggy top stitch. So again, I'm going to come into the sleeve and back stitch. Okay, let's take a look. All right, I can tell this is upside down because I have a little bit more space up here. And that's one thing from now on you have to be very cognizant of. You really need to know whether you're upside down or not. So one thing you can do is flip it over and you'll see your letters are right side up, but you can also write top and bottom if needed. Now I used a Sharpie. I know it's in my seam allowance. You can use a pencil, something that erases, anything you like. Now I'm not too worried about this part of the seam allowance showing. You could glue it down, you could use some double-sided tape. It's fine. Okay, so there's my top. Okay, so now I have piece D and F. F is going to go over top of D in the same way we did the other sleeve. So I'm going to make a small seam allowance, 1/2 inch. I guess it's not really considered small. And I'm going to just top stitch top and bottom. Again, the sides are going to be left raw. If I had this color thread, I would be switching, but I don't, so I'll take my chances with orange, keep with the theme. That might be a little less than a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but 1/2 inch would be fine too, so whatever works. Stitch length of 5. I know that this material is very soft, so I'm not going to come up the side and then go over, because my machine doesn't do well when something doesn't have some structure, so I'm just going to be very careful. I'm in just a little bit farther to start, and just enough. It should be kept in the seam allowance. Now I can come down the side on this side because, no I don't. And I might even have to just leave it. Let's see, because I can tell it's there. Okay. Oh, it's fine. Okay. Now the bottom side. These lens cleaning cloths I just purchased on Amazon. They're not my favorite, I'll be honest. I got a new pair of glasses for work, from work I should say, and I love the cloth they came with. I can't remember the name of the company. I think Hill was in the name of it. I will have to check, but I love those and I plan to purchase those, and they are more expensive, but it's so worth it. They're so nice. All right, so I think this one I just have a little less than a 1/2 inch seam allowance. 1/4 inch top stitching. Again, just a quick back stitch. Okay, whatever side looks nicer for you, make that one the top. It wouldn't really matter. So we're gonna take piece D, and for this one, I like my sunglasses more towards the top of the bag so that they don't get crushed by anything down in the bag. And it's the opposite side of the water bottle, so there's no worry there. So I do 1.5 inches. So here it is, 1.5 inches down. I could go 2 inches down. That's just too much for my liking. So I'm going to keep it at 1.5. This one I will clip in place because I don't want it to move. Just going to baste until I get to the bottom. I don't need to back stitch, it's just a basting stitch. But when I get to the bottom, where I have my top stitching, I'm going to make sure I stop right in a previous stitch hole. Even if I have to lift up my presser foot, and actually that did it. Okay, and I'm going to turn, and now I'm going to sew across the bottom to make the bottom of the pocket. So I'm going to try my best to be in the same line. Okay. And now I'm going to baste up the other side. I kept the same stitch length because any top stitching I would have used 5, and basting I'm still going to use 5. Okay, make sure it's all flat. And just baste up the edge. Make sure it remains even up here too. This material tends to push a little bit, and because I don't have a walking foot, it tends to push a little bit more. My last one, I had to remove the one side and move it down a little bit. So if that happens, just do that if it bothers you. Okay, so there is our designated sunglasses sleeve. And where are my ugly sunglasses? I do not wear these, but look at that, how nice. And then if I need to clean the lens, I just use the cloth. Okay, just use the cloth. You can also attach a little extra cloth. So what happens is, these that I buy are double in size, and I cut them down. So I just cut them in half. I feel like they're, and then I end up with a little part of the piece that I cut off. So I could always attach that here as a little add-on. So whatever, but either way, this doesn't scratch your lenses. If I were to put it up against this waterproof canvas, who knows what that would do over time, or to your glasses. So it's nice. That's why I really wouldn't go wild with this pocket, and I would not use this waterproof canvas for this portion of the pocket. Just use something really soft. I don't think they recommend flannel and things. I think those have something in it that would scratch. So just be careful, whatever you use. Okay, we are almost done. We're getting there. So now this is our new C pocket, or excuse me, D. This is our new D pocket. Okay, top of our pocket. And this is where it's really important to know what side is up. Really wouldn't matter too much if I were to goof it up and make this the top, but I don't want to. I know what part is my top. This is my top. There's the word top. So this piece with my opening is going to go right sides together with the end of piece C. Could I put it over on piece A? Absolutely. I just tend to work from left to right. So again, this is going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and we are going to open it up and top stitch. But this top stitching is going to go through this pocket. Okay, we are going to top stitch on it. As you saw, when I put my sunglasses in, I had plenty of room. Okay, 1/2 inch seam allowance, here we go. Forgot to decrease my stitch length, we'll do it now. There we go. But since I did forget, I would not go back over this. I don't want any extra holes. Similar to how we do vinyl. We don't need extra holes in vinyl. It's looking great. Open up the seam allowance. If you're using cotton and you want to use a lens cleaner, I don't know how that would iron. I don't imagine it would iron well, so just be forewarned. Okay, so now we need to top stitch, opening up our seam allowance. So I'm going to start in the pocket, come up and around, all the way down, and then I will finish here. And actually, I'll probably finish right there. Oh, but I said I was going to stitch right on top of the pocket. I don't really have to, so I don't think I will. But I could. This one I could, because I know I have plenty of room. Okay. And what I could do, since you've seen it 3 times now, I start in going towards my pocket, which we know I'm not stitching into my pocket like that. So I can put my needle down and pivot. And then that also ensures that my seam allowance stays open. Okay, so I have my pocket out of the way. I'm going to take a stitch or 2 and then back stitch. Yeah, I turned that all the way around. I didn't want to turn it in towards me. I'm picky that way. Again, I'm feeling to make sure my seam allowance is open. Oh, and then I forgot to put it back to 5. Whoops. It's a good thing that a customer is not going to notice that difference. There we go. I did back stitch, and it is going to be visible, but you know what? It's in the bottom half of the pocket. Nobody's going to be looking at that. There we go. That's half of our pocket, our sunglasses pocket. Now is the time, if you want to add a slip pocket, that you can do that. So what I typically do with the slip pocket is I go 3 inches in from either side of the water bottle sleeve. So for either side. So I either go 3 inches in here or 3 inches in here. And then that will be the corner of the slip pocket. I tend to do them after I have sewn it in the round. Yes, I know it's a pain, and I have to really, you open this up, and I use my little ruler to measure, and I line up my pocket, and then I will tape the top part of the pocket. So that's what I do. But if it is so much easier for you, you can go ahead and do that. Here's the thing, the reason I come 3 inches in, and it may not be center, but you have to take into account that the water bottle, especially if you're using a large one, is coming into your pocket. So you don't want your pocket up against here, because then your water bottle is going to be banging into whatever is in the pocket. So that's why I come 3 inches in, and I come 3 inches in on the other side as well. Okay, it doesn't matter on this side where it is, because they're small. Okay, but this is just might be so bulky, so I come in 3 inches. But I'm going to do mine after. That's what I like to do. So now again, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and let's sew side A to our sunglasses pocket D. Stitch length just shy of 4. It's hitting my other light, so I'm gonna fold it in. Okay, and this will be the trickiest part to top stitch, but it's doable, and for me, it's a necessary part. Okay, so there is, to shine on there. Oops, hitting everything here. And there's our sunglasses pocket. So now we have to top stitch this side. So again, I'm going to start in the pocket, come up, over, and down through the pocket. I'll pivot. You'll see. So let's open up that seam allowance. Wow, it took a 4th time for me to remember to turn it first. Okay. And it's okay if this scrunches over. so you can see I'm inside the pocket, just a stitch or two. Stitch length of 5, 1, 2 stitches, go back for back stitching. Pivot, 2 stitches. And I do this a lot. I stitch inside my bags a lot, so I've had a lot of practice. A bag that has a seam through the bottom, I will put it right up in my machine and stitch the bottom flat. So I'm used to it. Just handle your fabric, make it do what you want it to do, and take your time. Again, could you stitch right over it? Sure. This one, not a problem. I would not on the water bottle. But do what works for you. If that's the only way you can do it, go right ahead. Design feature. Make sure your seam allowance is open. You can usually feel it. So then I keep opening up, moving my fabric aside. See if I can push that down so you can see it. I can see it just fine with it up like this, but I know you can't, so move it down. Scrunch it out of the way for you. 2 stitches. And then back up the other side, and I'll stop right at my pocket again. And actually, because of the 1/4 inch seam allowance, I could move it a little bit. We'll see what happens when it ends. It gets there. Nope, we're good. All right, that is it. I want to show you the interior pocket for the sunglasses. It's hard to get the sunglasses in when it's flat, but you have to remember that it's on the edge, the corner, and it becomes 3-dimensional. And this is where I was talking about the sleeve and the water bottle, depending on what size water bottle. That's why we go 3 inches out from the edge of the sleeve and then put our pockets in here. And no, they're not going to be squared. So that's what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and put some slip pockets in, and I'll show you that real quick too. I'll put one side in. The other side's the same. Now we need to find the centers of our bag for both sides. So I've lined up the seams on the sunglasses pocket and clipped it, and on water bottle slip side. Okay, and then I'm going to take a very scant corner off, just enough for me to see it. Okay, very scant on both sides. Okay, very little. Unclip it, and it's important to do it on the bottom side of the bag because that's where our base is going. And then I will match up those 2 marks, clip them together, and then smooth it out, and that is my true center. And then when I bring those back to the side, now I know where my centers are for both sides, okay? And that gives me a true center. I'm going to attach the bottom the same way that Lynette wrote in her directions, and you'll be set to go. All right, so I'm going to show you how I do my pockets once it's already in the round. So I have my pocket already prepared. I do half the amount just because I do, again, an unlined pocket. I do double turn the top, okay? So this is gonna be the smaller of the two pockets that I will do. This one is half, so that I lose some for seam allowance. So it's going to go in 3 inches down and 3 inches in. So I'm going to place my slip pocket right there. I know it's even because my ruler is even up here and my pocket is evenly hitting the edge of the ruler. And then I'm going to just use my tape to tape down the top edge of the pocket. So that it stays in place. So there we go. And you can see how far it is next to the sunglasses pocket, but it won't interfere with the edge of that. Whereas this one, there, okay, much less interference. So I will go into this pocket. I will start here. I will come up and form a triangle and then come down and around and across and then back up and then form my last triangle. So let's go over to the machine and I'll show you exactly what I do. Since my first pocket didn't record, I'm doing the second one for you. I do the corners of my pockets like a triangle. If you've done a lot of sewing, you might know what designer introduced that, and I love the technique. So I'm going to do that for this as well. I do it on all my pockets. So I'll start on the edge and come up toward the open edge of the pocket. And I'll sew the triangle. I always come across when I do my first line up, I stop wherever my top stitching is. Come across my top stitching. And then I'll go down, and I do use a 1/8 seam allowance for attaching pockets. Open up your bag a bit. Open up, have a nice opening here, nice and flat, everything's flat. Make sure this stays intact. We're good. Keep going. And I'll remove my clips as I go. I could have glued the edges down and waited for it to dry. I could have used double-sided tape. The waterproof canvas creases well enough that clips are enough for me. And then at my corners, I always make 1 stitch, well, that there. It's going to be 1.5 stitches, but I always go a little bit on an angle and then come across the bottom. Make sure this stays flat, that nothing pops up. And whenever I'm taking my hands completely off of the area that I'm stitching, I make sure my needle is down. 1 on an angle and straight up. Instead of letting the needle go just a pinch past where my top stitch is for the pocket, I just lifted my presser foot and I moved it back just a pinch so I could get into the same hole. Just makes it look nicer. Remove my tape, come across 3 stitches, hand crank it if you have to, and then back down. And we have no choice but to top stitch here. I guess I could have top stitched. I could have come across and then top stitched over my existing stitches. We're good though. there's my pocket. Looks great. It's nice and even. And this one is going to be for my cell phone, which I'm using to record, so I'll take part of the case. I could put a pen pocket on one side, lipstick pocket. Most likely I will divide off one side. My phone's pretty large, so it should fit most phones, but I'll leave a little extra room. So this will be a pen pocket. So I'll do a pen divide here. So I'll put a little X up here once I start. I love these little fish for threading this machine. And I do eyeball it. Just a small X, nothing crazy. Lay it out flat, and off we go. I don't do an X at the bottom, just at the top, and that's it. All the extra threads, and there it is. Okay, so here is the interior. Water bottle sleeve. Sunglasses. And then the two slip pockets. There we go. And that's it. That's what it looks like. Go ahead and attach the base just as she has written in the pattern. We found the centers of our bottom, so you know where those are, and should be easy to attach. Do it the same way. Thanks for watching. Good luck.